Hi, Nick McQuaid here to talk to you for the second time in week and last time in week 8, and to talk to you specifically about expanding your final project, which you should be working on about now. So you're going to turn in a PDF file that's worth 15 points, so it's important to get it right. 15 out of 100 points for the whole course, that is 15% of your grade. So you need a schema for your final project, although that's not the only thing you need, and there are several ways to create it. And the most straightforward and tedious way is to write it out by hand in a .sql file. And I would love for you to have the experience of doing this, even though you won't always do it this way in real life. And there's a reason for that. The reason is so that you can easily and naturally read schemas, because you will definitely have to read schemas, and they will definitely have errors in them in real life. And you can't learn this by watching, just as you can't learn to golf by studying photographs, even though there are books promising to do exactly that. So you can use the schemas as models, the schemas that I've written out for you in the SQLite examples folder as models, and write it out. That's one approach that you can take, and that's what I would like you to take. But most people will use shortcuts, or I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people will use shortcuts. The most obvious shortcut is to use the .dump command on an existing database to get a schema that you can use as a model. If you're using spreadsheet data, you can easily convert that into CSV data and use the SQLite .import command to import each table into a database. This imports each table into a table. So it doesn't actually create the whole database. It creates one table of the database. So it's still a little bit tedious. And there are rules for importing CSV data that lets you use the table names from the spreadsheet if the spreadsheet has table names. And SQLite has a very specific CSV format that it adheres to, which is to be found in RFC 4180, which is a standard that you can search for online. But the most prevalent shortcut in 2026, of course, is to use a large language model to write the initial draft for you, and then to edit by hand to root out mistakes, which is hard to do because you have to you read before you write, basically. And as I will repeat to you in a later lecture next week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about LLMs, and they make mistakes. And so you're going to lose points, or you're going to somehow proofread your work properly. And the best way to proofread is to gain experience by writing schemas by hand. But if you're going this route, you've already ignored that advice. So the nature of LLM mistakes is mainly twofold. This isn't everything, but this is most of the things. They have a cutoff date, and they don't know about things that appeared on the web after that date. So, for example, SQLite is always being advanced. There are new versions of it coming out in the last couple of, well, actually one came out I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, something like that. And so there are little changes that the LLM doesn't know about. And the date of the LLM cutoff is not always obvious. And they also represent an amalgam of patterns. This is how hallucinations, for example, happen. Patterns that appeared in their training data, and those amalgams can be like Frankenstein's monsters, not anything that actually appeared in the wild, but slapped together from different things that appeared in the wild. So you could have a combination of an Oracle example and a SQL Server example, which wouldn't work in either Oracle or SQL Server. So the schema command is definitely the most reliable way to get the schema as it's been actually used. But even though the schema is the most important part, remember the other components that are listed in the assignment description, such as the entity relationship diagram, a sample of the insert into statements, the select statements, the appendix of LLM prompts, and I think there's more to it than even that. For the insert into statements, it's enough to do about a dozen records and then include an ellipsis. And it should be easy for me to find stuff in the PDF file. So for example, there are programs like Quarto, whose website is quarto.org, program that I use to create PDFs, that will automatically build a table of contents for you. you should be able to make sense of the PDF file a year from now when you actually have to create and use a database. So err on the side of putting in too much explanatory material rather than too little. Sometimes students avoid putting in too much explanatory material, not so much because they're lazy, but because they're afraid that it'll be additional stuff that can be judged and found wanting. And in fact, just the opposite is the case. The more you explain, the more lenient the grading is likely to be. Okay, so that's all I have to say right now about your project, and I hope that you are running with it right now in week 8, but I'll see you again in week 9. Thanks for watching.